Aliyah, what are you doing?
Mommy, I draw this.
Wow, that's nice.
Mommy, I like to be a reporter someday. Like that, Mommy.
Kemarin mencatat rekor tertinggi kasus positif corona. Angka positif COVID-19.
Good evening, New York and people around the world. I'm Almira Bautista.
I am Kenneth Brian Santos.
And I'm Diane Mayroman, your news anchors for today.
And welcome to One Globe News Network. Your nation, your news.
To start the report, let's hear from Ms. Reynalyn Reyes, live at Mississippi, South Louisiana Port, reporting international trade theory and why it must be considered. Reynalyn?
Preview.
Yes, thank you, Diane. As you can see, I'm here at the Foreign Trade Zone 124, an isolated and enclosed police area where foreign and domestic merchandise furnish for loading, unloading, storing, and exhibiting goods here in Mississippi. International trade theories has long held that some trade is better than no trade, more trade is better than less trade, and free trade is better than a restricted trade. These theories will show why countries should trade products and services even when they can produce them domestically. International trade theory and policy has been highly controversial since the 18th century. That's why studying international trade theory must be considered. But first, why do nations trade? What is free trade? Nations trade among nations because countries are different. Unequal distribution of natural resources, difference in technology, cost advantages, and different in preferences, like Americans prefer basmati rice in India. Free trade is where government does not influence international trade through quotas and tariffs. Free trade is considered to be fair trade because what is free must be fair. According to the theory of mercantilism prevailed during 16th century, the wealth of a nation is measured based on its accumulated wealth in terms of gold and silver, whereby the nation should accumulate wealth by encouraging exports and discouraging imports. Theory of mercantilism aims at creating trade surplus and in turn accumulate nations' wealth. In absolute advantage theory, according to Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, a country's wealth is based on its available goods and services rather than gold. Where one country can produce a unit of good with less cost or cheaper than another country, and that country has an absolute cost advantage in producing that good. In absolute advantage theory, the trade should be unrestricted so that the country may specialize products for which it has an advantage because specialization will increase efficiency and benefit all. In comparative advantage theory, according to David Ricardo on his principles of political economy and taxation, nation can still gain from trade even without an absolute advantage. A country has a comparative advantage in producing a good if the opportunity cost of producing that good in terms of other goods is lower in that country compared to other countries. Even if countries do not have an absolute advantage, they can gain from trade by allocating resources based on their comparative advantage and trade with each other. In HO theorem or the Heckscher-Ohlin model, it proposes that a country should export what they can most efficiently and plentifully produce. It also emphasizes the exporting of goods, requiring factors of production that a country has in abundance. The HO model is also called the factor proportion theory because it discusses the proportions in which the different factors of production are available in different countries and proportions in which they are used in producing different goods. And that's end my report. Again, I'm Reynalyn Reyes reporting live at Mississippi, South Louisiana Port. This is One Globe News Network, your nation, your news. Back to you, Diane.
Thank you, Renaline. Upon the continuation of international theory, one important motivation for international trade is the efficiency improvements that can be arise because of the presence of economic scale in production. In the year 1980s, models of trade introduced economic scale in creative new ways and became known as the new trade theory. Economic scale in production means that production at a larger scale or more output can be achieved in a lower cost. It is worth noting that the assumption of economic scale in production can present a deviation from the assumption of perfectly competitive market. In most perfectly competitive model, it is assumed that the production takes place with constant return of scale. This means that the unit cost of production remains constant as the scale of production increases. The next theory is the product life cycle. Product life cycle is the process goes through from when it first introduced into the market until it declines or removed from the market. The product life cycle has 4 stages, which are introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. And lastly, Michael Porter proposed the theory of competitive advantage in 1985. This theory suggests that states and businesses should pursue policies that create high-quality goods to sell at high prices in the market. In addition to that, competitive advantage occurs when an organization acquires or develops an attribute or combination of attributes that allows it to not perform its competitors. The political economy of international trade will be reported by my co-host, Almira. Take it away.
Preview. Thank you, Dayan. Upon reports on government policy, international trade has been highly controversial since then and up till now. The political economy of international trade. And here are the instruments of trade policy: the tariff, subsidies, import quotas, voluntary export restraints, local content requirements, administrative policies, and the anti-dumping policies. From the tariff is the tax imposed by one country on the goods and services imported from another country. On subsidies, government subsidies are financial grants extended by the government to private institutions or other public entities in order to stimulate economic activity or promote activities that are in the public good. From the Philippines, subsidies extended by the national government to state-run firms in August surged 8-fold to 42.35 billion pesos, with state health insurer PhilHealth Insurance Corporation receiving the bulk of the amount. Latest data from the Bureau of Treasury showed that the total subsidies received by the government-owned and controlled corporations GOCCS in August was way higher than the amount released in the same month last year at 4.99 billion pesos. Import quotas are a form of restriction imposed by government on trade of a particular commodity by imposing restriction on either fixed in terms of value or quantity of a product which can be imported during a given period of time, usually for a year, and usually imposed by the government to provide benefits to local producers. On Washington, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative announced country-specific in quota additional allocations under the tariff rate quota (TRQ) on imported raw cane sugar fiscal year 2021, October 1, 2020 through September 30, 2021. Voluntary export restraints, the option to build manufacturing facilities overseas bypass exporting rules, is one of the main reasons why voluntary export restraints, or what we call VERS, have historically been ineffective in protecting domestic producers. On local content requirements, it has impact on the global economy, which are policies imposed by governments that require firms to use domestically manufactured goods or domestically supplied services in order to operate in an economy. administrative policies in foreign employees of the office's rules, the business's expectations and values, and the HR-related issues such as paid off and health insurance eligibility. Anti-dumping policies. An anti-dumping duty is a protectionist tariff that a domestic government imposed on foreign imports that it believes are priced below fair market value. In the long term, anti-dumping duties can reduce international competition of domestic companies producing similar goods. The primary intention of anti-dumping duties is to save domestic jobs. However, these tariffs can also lead to higher prices for domestic consumers. For political arguments for government intervention, protecting jobs and industries is the most common political reason for trade restrictions. Usually, this results from political pressures by unions or industries that are threatened by more efficient producers and have more political clout than the consumers that will eventually pay national security. Industries such as aerospace or electronics are often protected because they are deemed important for national security. Economic arguments for intervention. The infant industry argument suggests that an industry can be protected until it can develop and be viable and competitive internationally. On the development of world trading system, members failed to agree on how to work toward the reduction of barriers to cross-border trade in agricultural products and cross-border trade and investment in services. For the future of World Trade Organization, WTO focuses on anti-dumping policies, the high level of protectionism in agriculture, the lack of strong protection for intellectual property rights. In many nations, continued high tariffs on non-agricultural goods and services in many nations. And that is the report for this evening for the political economy of international trade. This is One Globe News Network, your nation, your news. Good night, everyone. Good night, New York.
Preview.
And welcome back to One Globe News Network, your nation, your news. I am Kenneth Brian Santos, your host. To start the report, let's hear from Ms. Jessica Pangilinan, reporting foreign direct investment and its current state.
Preview.
Yes, thank you, Kenneth. Hello everyone, I am Jessica Pangilinan reporting live here at Studio 3. And for today's topic, we will be discussing about the whole coverage of foreign direct investment, or what they so-call the FDI. This is an investment made to acquire a lasting interest in or effective control over an enterprise operating outside of the economy of the investor. Example of these are McDonald's, Apple, and Nike. There are also forms in FDI such as greenfield investments. This is a type of a foreign direct investment where a company starts its operation in the other countries as a subsidiary and invests in constructions of offices, plants, sites, and building products, thereby managing its operation and achieving the highest level of the controls over its activities. Example of these are Coca-Cola and Starbucks. The other form of FDI is acquisition or merger, meaning it is merging with an existing firm in a foreign nation. This is where a majority of cross-border investment happens, because it is quicker to put into action than a greenfield investment. We will now tackle the FDI net inflows and outflows. When we say net inflows, this is the value of an in-one direct investment made by non-resident investors in the reporting economy. This includes the reinvested earnings and the intracompany loans, and also the net of the repatriation of capital and repayment of loans. And now in the FDI net outflows, these now are the value of an outward direct investment made by the residents of the reporting economy to external economies. This includes also their reinvested earnings and intracompany loans, net of receipts from the repatriation of capital and trade. Next one will be the trends of foreign direct investment according to United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. Global FDI collapsed in 2020, falling 42% from $1.5 trillion in 2019 to estimated $859 billion due to global pandemic. They expect FDI flows to remain weak due to uncertainty. Our third to the last topic is exporting. What is this? It is something that is shipped or brought to another country to be sold or traded. Example of this is rice. So due to the high demand of rice in the Philippines, other countries like Thailand export their products in order to prevent scarcity. We go on with licensing. This is defined as the granting of permission by the licensor to the licensee to use intellectual property rights such as trademarks, patents, brand names, or technology under defined conditions. Under a licensing agreement, the multinational firm grants rights on its intangible property to a foreign company for a specified period of time. So this is same as trade barriers, since trade barriers is considered as a government-induced restrictions on international trade. So why this also limits the exporting? Because economists generally agree that trade barriers are detrimental and has a decrease in overall economic efficiency. So most trade barriers work on the same principle, that the imposition of some sort of cost on trade that raises the price of the traded product. And that ends with my report. And now here's my partner Angela Quilino for further information regarding FDI licensing, its drawback, and the benefits and costs of FDI for home countries.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Upon the consummation of foreign direct investment reported by Jessica, I, Angela K. Villinao, will discuss to you the foreign direct investment licensing. There are limitations of licensing. The first is the internalization theory, also known as market imperfection approach. This is a trade theory that arises from international markets where perfect competition doesn't exist. Licensing has three major drawbacks. Licensing may result to firms giving away valuable technological know-how to potential foreign competitors. Example is the RCA color television from the USA and the Matsushita and Sony television from Japan. The firms' lack of tight control over manufacturing, marketing, and strategy in a foreign country are required to maximize their market shares and profitability. A firm's competitive advantage is based upon its management, marketing, and manufacturing capabilities rather than its product. The problem here in such capabilities may not be amenable in such licensing. This is the pattern of foreign direct investment. Observation suggests that firms in the same industry often undertake FDI around the same time and direct their investment activities toward their certain locations. There are two theories to explain this pattern. The first one is the strategic behavior, and the second one is the product life cycle theory. The first one is the strategic behavior. Strategic behavior is the general term for activities taken by firms which are intended to influence their market environment in which they compete. The second one is the product life cycle theory. This theory suggests that the early in the product life cycle, all the parts and labor associated with the product comes from the area where it was invented. The elective paradigm. Elective paradigm is also known as the ownership, location, and internalization model, or the OLE framework. This is a three-tiered evaluation framework that companies can follow when attempting to determine if it is beneficial to pursue the foreign direct investment. There are four main benefits of inward foreign direct investment for a host country. The first one is the resource transfer effect. FDI brings capital, technology, and management resources. The second one is the employment effect. FDI can bring jobs. The third one is the balance of payment effects. FDI can help a country to achieve a surplus. And the fourth one is the effects on competition and economic growth. Greenfield investments increase the level of competition in a market, driving down prices and improving the welfare of consumers. Foreign direct investment has three main costs. The first one is the adverse effects of FDI on competition within the host nation. Subsidiaries of foreign MNEs may have greater economic power than indigenous competitors because they may be part of the larger international organization. The second cause is the adverse effects on the balance of payments. When a foreign subsidiary imports a substantial number of its input from abroad host countries, balance of payments is negatively affected. The third one is the perceived loss of national sovereignty and autonomy. Decisions that affect the host country will be made by a foreign parent that has no real commitment to the host country, and over with the host country's government has no real control. The benefits of FDI for the home country includes the effect of the home country's balance payment from the inward flow of the foreign earnings. Also, the employment effects that arise from the outward FDI. And the gains from learning valuable skills from the foreign markets that can subsequently be transferred back to the home country. And for the cost of the FDI from the home country includes the home country's balance of payment can suffer from the initial capital outflow required to the finance of FDI. If the purpose of the foreign direct investment is to serve the home market from a low-cost labor location, and if the FDI is substitute from the direct exporters. The next one is the employment may be negatively affected if the FDI is a substitute for domestic production. And that is the end of our reports. Thank you for listening. Take it away, Kenneth.
Thank you, Angela and Jessica. Again, I am Kenneth Brian Santos, your host, reporting live the state of regional economic integration and its levels. Regional economic integration is an economic arrangement between different nations marked by the reduction of or elimination of trade barriers and the coordination of monetary and fiscal policies. So for the levels of economic integration, the first one is free trade area, which eliminates all barriers to the trade of goods and services among member countries but determine their own trade policies for non-members. The next one is custom union, eliminates trade barriers between member countries and adopts a common external trade policy. The next one is common market, has no barriers to trade member countries, a common external trade policy, and the free movement of factors of production. We also have economic union, has the free flow of products and factors of production between members, a common external trade policy, a common currency, a harmonized tax rates, and a common monetary and fiscal policy. And last but not the least is political union, involves a central political apparatus that coordinates the economic, social, and foreign policy of member states. So the following are examples of existing regional economic integration. So the first one is the North American Free Trade Area. And next is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Next is the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation. And last is the South Asian Free Trade Area. And that is our latest news for this evening.
reaching out to you. Of the night, no matter where I go, always under by your side. At the end of this journey, time has led me back to my home. Now I found the way back home. Trying to search the